Hello and welcome to another episode of Conquering My Collection and another wrap-up video. A big one this time. We're covering February, March and most of April 2021. I'm sure there'll be a few more things I watch before the end of April. I don't know when I'll post this video because my schedule's all over the place at the minute, but it's pretty much February, March and April of 2021. Now, I don't know if I did a count in January. That's going to annoy me, but I do have the Twitter thread to refer to, so we'll look at that at the end to see where I am with the letterboxd watch list, my Blu-ray watch list, all the films I have in my collection that I haven't seen before that I'm trying to work my way through. I want to say over the next few years, I think 10 years would probably be a more accurate timeline to look at, but realistically it's probably going to be looking at this watch list for the rest of my entire life anyway. So I got a fairly decent stack here. It's not as big as I would like it to be. In fact, it almost looks as big as the one I had for January, but then my mind is melding all these things together, so I really don't know. But we'll just get into this, and if you're unfamiliar, I think I just summed it up anyway, so we'll just get on with the damn thing. So the first film I have here is Poundland Pickup. And Lily is crying outside the door, as she would, as soon as I start filming. August, Osage County. I remember when this came out, I don't know, 2013, was it? 2012? I think it was around the time of the Oscars I became aware of this film, 2013. And it had all the buzz. Big cast, Julia Roberts, Meryl Streep. But there's an incredible cast here. So we got Ewan McGregor, Chris Cooper, Abigail Breslin, Benedict Cumberbatch. The whole cast is pretty stacked, and there's a lot of great acting going on here. Chris Cooper was interesting because I always associate Chris Cooper with fairly, I don't want to say darker roles, but more sinister characters at times, whereas here he's a very compassionate character, which kind of threw me off a little bit. But this is about a family who all get together in this one house, and there is this family incident, so they're all brought together, and it's really just this kind of bubbling tension between all the family members. And Meryl Streep is the kind of the mother of the family. She's going through a lot of shit, and it very much feels like an Oscar bait performance. She's throwing everything and the kitchen sink with her performance, and it was a very good performance. Don't get me wrong. I feel kind of bad for Meryl Streep because she is such a fantastic actress that whenever she does a really good performance, it's like, well, give her the Oscar or give her the nomination, and it almost becomes a parody of itself. But the fact is, she is a really good actress, and Julia Roberts is great. These are the two focal characters, but all of the characters really had a lot of, I wouldn't say equal weight in the story, but I feel like it was a really well-balanced story in terms of all the different characters. Really enjoyed the film, very solid. There's a kind of centerpiece argument scene at the family table, which is just incredible stuff. Overall, very good film, really enjoyed it, and I would keep it in my collection. See, when I started this series a few years ago, it's been 3 years now, I think, since I started this series, maybe 2 years, the goal was to do a video on a film I hadn't seen before in my collection, then decide whether or not I'd keep it in my collection, but I seem to forget to mention that, and I'll probably forget again in the future, but that's definitely one to keep. Very, very good film. I think I talked about in January, I started watching, I must have talked about it, the Pixar Shorts collection, the first volume. So in February and March, I chipped away at Volume 2. Unfortunately, Volume 3 has not been released in the UK, so I probably would like to grab that at some point, especially because Volume 3 no doubt covers maybe my favorite Pixar short ever, which is Piper, which is a masterpiece in my opinion. I love that film. So let's just kind of go through the films here. We have Your Friend the Rat, which probably my least favorite, I think, overall. It was kind of like a kind of history lesson thing where the rat from Ratatouille tells the history of rats and stuff, and it felt a little bit like a kind of a kid's show, which is fine, I suppose. It just wasn't very interesting as a short film. Presto I had seen before in the cinema. I think they paired that with Wall-E when that came out, and I went to see that in the cinema. So I had already seen that, so I didn't count it towards my watch list or anything, but it's a damn good one. Presto is a really good Pixar short. Burn-E, which is a Wall-E short. I hadn't seen that one, really enjoyed it. Partly Cloudy was a really good one. That was an interesting concept with the clouds. I'm assuming that's the one that it was, with the clouds and the kind of the outsider cloud. It was a really interesting kind of concept, a really cool little film. Doug's Special Mission, that is an Up, because a lot of they partner a lot of them with the feature films, and that was okay, perhaps one of the least memorable ones for me. George and AJ, I have no idea why they included this. It's really cheap. I think it was, I forget, I looked it up what it was. It's not like what is an official Pixar short, but I think it was like a web short or something, and it's like a 2 minute thing. It goes with Up, I think. Yeah, it's these two guys, and it just it felt like a student film, which is fine. There was a funny joke in it. I've forgotten the joke, but it made me laugh. But it was nowhere near up to the standards of the rest of them. So I think it would have been better served as an extra. Day and Night was fantastic. There's a little image of it there on the back of the Blu-ray. So you have these two characters who are like kind of silhouettes on a black background, and each of them contain the same internal landscape in both Day and Night. This rattling disc is doing my head in. I can just swing it around while I'm talking. Day and Night. Yes, they have the same internal landscape, but like during day and during the night. And they cross over, and then they fight together, then they learn that each has their own advantages. It's a really creative film. I really enjoyed that. And it had a kind of 50s, 60s style to the way that the two caricatures were animated and drawn that I really enjoyed. Then we have Hawaiian Vacation, fun little Toy Story 3 spin-off. Air Mater, which I really don't like the Mater character from the Cars movies, but Air Mater was pretty fun actually. And then there's Small Fry, which, yeah, that was another Toy Story one with the little, that was okay. Small Fry was alright. Time Travel Mater, I actually really liked. That was an interesting kind of little time travel-y concept. I kind of enjoyed that one. And finally, La Luna, which you can see a still from there. And I've seen that one too. That must have gone out with Brave, I think, in 2012. Really love La Luna. That's a great one. I'll put the disc back into the case. And I don't know why I did that, because I have more to talk about, and the disc is going to continue rattling. So I actually also went and watched the bonus features on here, the bonus films. And they're short films from the three directors, John Lasseter, Andrew Stanton, and Pete Docter. So they're student films, and it's a phenomenal extra to have, I think. So we have Nightmare and Lady and the Lamp, which were both done by John Lasseter. Interesting short films, kind of rough around the edges, but you see some flair of, storytelling sensibilities within the animation and stuff. Somewhere in the Arctic and A Story were from Andrew Stanton. I loved Somewhere in the Arctic. Really interesting use of perspective. Really fun. Like really, really simple, but really, really fun. A Story I don't remember too much about. I think that it was one of the lesser ones for me. And then we have Pete Docter, who I'm a huge fan of. I love Pete Docter. And his three films were Winter, Palm Springs, and Next Door. Next Door was a nice little film. Palm Springs, if I'm remembering it correctly, was, again, one of the least interesting ones, but Winter was a really fun little film. And loving Pete Docter's films as much as I do, it was nice to see kind of his origin points as an animation director. Next up, we have a feature film, and it is one that I've wanted to see for a very long time. I'm a huge fan of the actress who is at the focal center of this film, and it is Martha Marcy May Marlene, starring Elizabeth Olsen and John Hawkes. Very provoking film at times. It's about a young woman who was in a cult and escapes from that cult, and it's about how she deals with the first week of being away from what she was sucked into for a number of years. And this was released 10 years ago, so Elizabeth Olsen looks fairly younger than she does now. She almost looks like a 18-year-old kid. It's almost kind of a bit of a shock. You watch WandaVision and some of her more recent work, like Sorry for Your Loss, that phenomenal show on Facebook Watch. And, going back 10 years, wow, she looks so young, because she was so young. She's roughly around my age, I think, around 30, 31, 32. And I was kind of intrigued to watch this, but I knew that it was an uncomfortable film, and I'd heard things about it that it was kind of, provoking viewing. It certainly is. There's a fairly distressing rape scene in there, which was not fun to watch, to say the least. But it really it delves into this brainwashing almost, and how easy it can be. And just the way they told it, with the flashback implementation of her staying with her sister, but being haunted by the things that she'd gone through, and us kind of learning, what happened to her through the traumatic episode she was having was very effective, and seeing how she wasn't adjusting to normality again, phenomenal performance. She really was great. John Hawkes too was very convincing and unsettling in his charm. And the ending really kind of threw me off, and I really didn't like it until I sat down and thought about it for a while. I like it when a film makes you think about the way it ended, or certain elements of the story where at first you're unsure, or you didn't like it or something, and then you let it kind of settle and kind of marinate in your mind, and you think, actually that was really good. And so I actually really like the ending. It's not going to be for everyone, I guess, but a really, really great drama that I enjoyed a lot. The next one is tricky because I've been thinking about this with this video coming up. So I must have watched this in February, I would say. So it's been about 2 months probably since I've seen it. And it came out maybe last year, 2020, from BFI. It is a film by Yasujiro Ozu, The Flavor of Green Tea Over Rice. The tricky thing about this film is that I already have kind of lost my memory of exactly the specifics of the plot. The basic outline is there. It's about a marriage that's kind of slowly falling apart, and about this couple who you begin to wonder more and more as the film goes on. How did these people come together? And I can't remember whether it was an arranged marriage or something. I'm not entirely sure if it was, to be honest, but I really, really enjoyed this film. I remember really, really liking it, and this was a cool example of me buying something. It was on Amazon for $6.99. I thought, absolutely, it's remastered at 4K, so it's like a brand new restoration of the film, and a very good price, so I picked it up, watched it straight away, and just really enjoyed it. It felt like Ozu, as you would expect. He has a very specific kind of style, slow, methodical family drama, interpersonal relationships, and so on. And this marriage and how it was kind of falling apart a little bit was a really interesting story, I think. And there's a niece who kind of is involved, and they just have different sensibilities, these two people, and I kind of really enjoyed where it kind of led towards the end. I think that that the end scene, the final kind of note, sticks in my mind more than anything else. But so I think it's probably one that isn't a fantastic film. It's not great, but it was a really good film. Absolutely one to keep in. I mean, I love Ozu anyway, and I need to see far more of his films than I currently have. So, but it's one of those films that I would, and then just seeing the faces of the actresses there on the front. There's always really good casts, I feel like, and it can be tricky, I think, with foreign films. And I say this sometimes, that when you watch a foreign film and you don't understand the language, are you really seeing a good performance, or are you kind of almost imagining the performance and reading it like a book almost? Because obviously, if there's like a really powerful scene going on with high emotions, then you can kind of tell if the acting's really good. But when it's like more subtle thing, I mean, it's tricky. But I think in Ozu's films, the acting is so subtle that it's almost being told without the words, and you can really tell that the acting is great, and that there are subtleties at play. They'll say one thing and you can see their faces meaning another. So I think that it is possible to pick up on those things. Sometimes it's difficult for me. And when I watch films from all different countries, different languages, things sound differently, so it's one of those things. But with this one, I think that the acting was really strong. They usually are in Ozu films, I think. But I definitely, admittedly, do not remember all the fine, like of all the plots. It's just one of those things where it didn't really retain for me after a couple of months. But I did really, really enjoy it. A good 4 out of 5 movie, I think. Next up, Terminator 2, Judgment Day. I had never seen this, funnily enough. No, of course I've seen Terminator 2, Judgment Day. So this was, I'm including this because it was a documentary that was on my list. And it was called T2, Reprogramming the Terminator. It's an hour-long retrospective made in 2017, which I, of course, watched in preparation for my Cameron King of the World series. Really good little documentary where we have, James Cameron, Arnold Schwarzenegger, all the cast, reflecting on Terminator 2 now, some, 25 years after. I don't know if there's like an anniversary edition, I don't think so. So, 1991, we're coming up on, well, it's 30 years this year, actually, so yeah, it's just over 25 years post T2 that they made the documentary for this Blu-ray, and it's a very good one. I enjoyed it very much as far as retrospective documentaries go. Giving it a good hour, you get into the stories, and there's a wealth of behind-the-scenes footage to use to kind of supplement that, and so it was a really good documentary. Next up, we have one of the latest Eureka Masters of Cinema releases, Spy number 243, The Last Warning. directed by Paul Lenny, released in 1929. This is a silent film. And it was nice just to receive this in the mail and go, oh, my collection's complete again. It's a really fun, satisfying feeling, and I'm going to keep banging that drum that it's just so nice to have all of the spine numbers now, and I can just buy a new one, and it just comes in and completes the collection instantaneously. It's a lot of fun and enjoyable for me as a collector, but I threw this on straight away, pretty much. I think maybe the day I bought it, or the day that it arrived, or the day afterwards, really quickly threw it in after work, in like the early hours of the morning, and really, really enjoyed it. So it starts out on a stage in a theater, and I love just seeing the packed house, watching the play. Like it felt like high budget, like it felt like a real production, that they got all the extras in there to kind of be in the audience, and this play is kind of going, is playing out, I suppose. And one of the actors dies on stage for real. They take him backstage, and there's all sorts of stuff going on. The police arrives, and they're trying to figure out what happened, and did anything, was anything untowards, kind of involved in his death. And I suddenly thought, holy shit, is this going to be like the whole movie takes place over this one night, and it's all contained in the theater, and it's a whodunit? And I thought, oh, please, I would love that. But it isn't, unfortunately. But it kind of does play out that way, because, the tragedy happens, the actor dies, everyone goes their separate ways, and then we flash forward many years into the future. The theater is run down and cobweb-ridden, and, it's in a state of disarray, but someone has come along and has kind of got the rights to the theater, and they want to run the same play again, and they want to reunite all the actors to come back and play the same parts of where this, potential murder took place. So all of those actors, they come back again. I'm pretty sure one of the actors, in one of the characters in the movie, I think it looks like he has a silver streak through his hair to kind of denote that either time has passed or time has not been kind to him stress-wise. So you feel the weight that this is taking on some of these people to come back. But they all come back, and they're retracing the steps, and they're going to try and put on the same performance, the same play. And all this weird stuff starts happening, and it does become this whodunit that takes place almost entirely at this theater, and I really, really enjoyed it. There's some nice inventive camera work, or not even camera work, but like the some of the optical effects, lots of layering and stuff, which you can see as early as the the 1800s, really, with the stuff that Georges Méliès was doing, but in a much more, again, we're towards the end of the silent era here, so it's really refined and really nicely done. And it's a fun, spooky little whodunit movie. I really, really enjoyed it. It's not a masterpiece by any stretch, but it was a really damn good silent film. And it felt good after so many years to get back to watching a silent film, because except for maybe a Buster Keaton short here or there, I really have stopped watching them. And the reason for that is I was doing silent movie marathons fairly frequently, like every year. And I love doing them. I love doing them so much. And I did the first one in 2014, I did the second one in 2015, which was like this 9-hour video. I then released it as a mini-series, and then 2016 I did the third one, and 2017 I was going to do the fourth, which was going to be called Silent Movie Marathon 4, A History of Silence, and I was so excited about that. It was going to be a chronological look through the silent era. All films I'd never seen before, so kind of educating myself as I kind of potentially educate or inform the audience of some of the trends of the silent era and stuff. I was so excited for that. I did half of it, and it just stopped. As I'll finish it next week. And then it slipped out of my grasp, and then I gained a lot of weight again. I thought, well, it's going to be, it's going to really show how fat I am if it cuts from me with like the thin face, and then. And so I thought, well, I'll lose weight before I start it again. I never lost that much weight again. So I don't know. If I do kind of film that second half, it's going to be completely lopsided, but it's just one of those things. So I kept holding off, but it's just like, just do it. Just watch a silent film. It's not going to hurt me. And it just felt nice to go back to something that I love so much. And you do have to be in the right mood for it, but there's such a fascination for me with silent films, and it's both a passport into a whole other world and point in time that is so far removed from, the few generations that we live under, unless you have really old parents or grandparents. But, it feels at least 4 generations away, to the point where it's like, I don't know, there's a romanticism to it. And just also the technical side of it, of seeing how they shot films back then, and seeing how the storytelling comes across without the dialogue, and then I just enjoy the stories. And so it's there's lots of elements that make me really love silent films. Anyway, moving on from a film like The Last Warning to a film like The Mummy. Heard nothing but fantastically awful things about this. It was, of course, the start of the Dark Universe, and I cracked up in the first 2 seconds of this film because it starts with a kind of a Universal-esque opening logo, and it's like the Dark Universe. It's like the one and only. You know, it felt like they really was what's the phrase, putting the cart before the horse. You know, it just felt like they were trying to do too much too quick and to build a cinematic universe, and they didn't really put the time in to make a very good film. I didn't mind this. I kind of was nodding off a bit towards the end, and I didn't feel bad about it, if that tells you anything. I really like Russell Crowe's character in the film. I didn't think that he was in it, or that he would have that big of a part in it. I know that Russell Crowe was slated to do other stuff in the Dark Universe, but so that was a nice surprise. I can't not watch the plane sequence without remembering that they uploaded the trailer for this film before it came out without the music, and so it was just like Tom Cruise tumbling around a plane in silence, and you just hear like the ah. So no sound effects, no dialogue, just the no sound effects, no music, just the dialogue. Look it up; it's hilarious. So I couldn't not think about that, but. There is an extra on this that I did watch, and Tom Cruise and the actress, who I've forgotten already, who's like in the film with him, they did that for real. It's phenomenal, and I know people are down on Tom Cruise. I'm a fan of him. I know Scientology, I know all that stuff is sketchy, but I'm a big fan of Tom Cruise as a movie star, and I loved seeing the behind the scenes of them literally going up in a plane, doing the legit zero gravity, and doing that sequence for real, and even the actress who, you know, was game to do it as well. And it felt, when I watched it, like, that looks real. Like, that looks like there's no wires involved. It feels very, you know, tangible. And it's because they did it for real. And so it was, you know, that's a real highlight of the film, once you know that, I suppose. But overall, I like the woman who played the mummy. That was a cool twist on the character and stuff. But I don't know, just it wasn't entirely memorable to me. So this one, I don't know. I mean, I probably would sell this, but I'd probably get, like, what, 30p for it? May as well just keep it in. I don't know, it's almost just like a paperweight, really, isn't it? I enjoyed, like, I didn't hate it though. I thought it was okay. It was I don't know if I would watch it again. No, that's the thing. I did like Russell Crowe. It was fine. It was a fine, you know, past the time kind of movie. It wasn't offensive to me. It felt like it could have been a lot better, if that makes any kind of sense. Next up is, and that was, a Poundland pickup. To clarify, and this is another Poundland pickup from many years ago. Glad to finally get something like this out of the way, which was purely just grabbed because of the person on the cover, and that person is Nicolas Cage. The film is Pay the Ghost. Now, this has the Arrow Academy logo on it, but it's actually just Arrow Films who released this. But this is Pay the Ghost. Nicolas Cage, and I don't know the actress's name. She's from The Walking Dead. Sarah Wayne Callies. So she played Rick's wife in The Walking Dead in the first few seasons. So this is about Nicolas Cage and something really bad that happens to someone in his family. And the film is about him trying to figure out what happened. He's on a quest for the truth. He's on a quest for answers. And it's kind of a spooky movie. I'll say that much. I liked it. It is pretty decent. I would say that Sarah Wayne Callies was the standout to me. There's a certain scene where she has to sell a certain amount of panic and fear, and it felt fucking razor sharp perfect. Like, I was in that scene, like, oh my god. I was feeling what she was feeling. Wonderful performance in that sequence, and very good throughout the rest of the film. Nicolas Cage, you know, I feel bad because, again, you're almost me and Connie were just waiting for the freak out. You know, you're waiting for Nicolas Cage to start jumping into A, B, C, like, you just kind of, you expect it. You know, and I feel like that's unfair on him, and it goes along with, like, almost the internet, not echo chamber, it's like the perception of him kind of grows online and in the film community as this kind of crazy guy who does crazy things, but he's a pretty good actor, you know, and some would say that he's a great, I know that there are some people who are a big fan of him as an actor. I don't think he's amazing, but he's pretty good, and he does some good work in this as well. But I feel bad for expecting the Nicolas Cage freak-out moment, because obviously it's not going to happen in every film. And I don't feel like it was needed in this film either, but I feel bad for expecting it and almost wanting it at the same time. There's a few things in here that I thought, I don't know if that character would really do that. It kind of takes you out of it a little bit. And there's one bit in particular where he's looking for answers with this woman. I won't say too much about what the scene is, but there's this woman who could potentially have some answers for him of this quest that he's going on, and she says, "Oh, I'm not really. I don't know too much about that. I'm just a school teacher. Like, sorry. It's just one of the. I think you thought something different about who I am or what I might know." And then Nicolas Cage is like, well, no, this is like a really big deal. This is really serious. And she goes, "Oh, well, in that case." And then she just gives him the whole explanation of everything. And it just felt really, it felt like I could feel the writer at the script going, but she doesn't give anything away. And she's just a school teacher. How does he find out, though? She can just tell him. It felt really like, oh, okay. Just the setup of it where she's like, "Hey, look, I'm just a school teacher here." He just pushes her a little bit more, and she's like, "Well, if you go here and then you can do that and that, but you have to do this by this point in time because of the thing and the thing." And it felt way too neat in terms of explaining what he needed to do, but, it was I enjoyed it. Again, that's one that probably wouldn't stay in the collection, I think, so I might pop that on the to sell pile. But, again, some of these things, what are you going to get for them? It almost is, you're almost going to have to pay other people to take it off your hands. Next up, a documentary that I was half dreading watching because I felt like what kind of new information are we going to learn here? And it's on one of the bonus discs on the Titanic release, and it is Titanic: The Final Word. If you want my thoughts on that, you can go check out my individual review for that documentary in my James Cameron series, Cameron King of the World. But I absolutely loved that documentary. Love that it's on the Blu-ray. And so I own a copy of it in high definition. I can watch it whenever I want. A phenomenal analysis of the shipwreck of the Titanic, but the circumstances of the sinking, and analyzing, the shipwreck and where everything is laid out in the seabed, why it's there. It's fantastic stuff. There's a really emotional moment in there. There's some funny moments and really interesting, haunting moments. It's a phenomenal, hour and a half deep analysis of the Titanic and the sinking. Now, I don't know if I did in the January video like a favorite of kind of the wrap-up of all the things I talked about, but this would definitely be my favorite film that I watched. In fact, I'd say this is probably my favorite film that I've watched in 2021 so far from my collection, in terms of this whole Conquering My Collection project. And this is spine number 113 of the Masters of Cinema collection, Paper Moon, starring the O'Neills. So we have Ryan O'Neil and Tatum O'Neil. So I've heard about this, since the day I bought it, since the day it was announced, and it sounded like a really good idea for a film. And I think I might have read somewhere when Logan came out that they felt like it had some elements of Paper Moon. So it's about this young girl whose mother dies, and she's played by Tatum O'Neil. And her mother dies, and she has no father, and the film opens with a funeral. And this man turns up. What's his name? I forget the actual character's name. Moses Prey. So Moses turns up, and he kind of is at the funeral, which is attended by barely anyone. And right from the beginning, the people are like, "Oh, is there a resemblance between you and the girl?" And he's like, No. I just was a friend of the mother's, "Oh, where are you going?" Because she needs to get to this town to stay with her auntie. And so he immediately gets lumped with this young girl, and there's this whole question about whether or not he's actually her father. Of course, in real life, it's the actual father of Ryan O'Neil, his daughter, Tatum O'Neil. So it's the father-daughter in real life, playing a potential father-daughter duo in the movie, but it's not really addressed whether that's actually the case. You can kind of make up your own mind about that, which I liked, actually. It wasn't something that there was a big reveal at the end. Spoilers, there's no kind of official confirmation about whether or not they're an actual father and daughter. If that relationship is through blood, but you can make up your own mind, I think, and it's fairly clear. So Addie Loggins is the young girl. "I want my $200. It's just such an incredible performance. I read that Peter Bogdanovich, who directed this film, that he had a hard time directing her, which is, it's almost you see a great performance on screen, and you have this fantasy scenario of, wow, I bet she just walked on and was amazing, because she's so good. It must have just been so natural. But apparently it was fairly tricky to get the right performance out of her, but that's what a great director does. And it looks effortless when you see it on screen in the final product. It's a road movie. I love road movies, and it's really funny. It's just super, super funny. Really sharp. There's just some really memorable moments in it. Great scenes. It's exciting at times. It's kind of like edge of your seat stuff at times. And then other times you just enjoy them, just being there together and kind of quarreling and kind of going through highs and lows and other people joining the trip. I loved the young girl who was the assistant who joined them on the trip. She was so funny. She cracked me up with some of the stuff that she was saying. I loved that character. And yeah, it's just super fun. Just really funny, but it had that heart to it as well. But it stayed true to the characters. It didn't lean over to that kind of sickly sweet sentimentalism that I feel like if I was making this film, I probably would do that. But I liked that it didn't. It felt more true to the characters. They're both kind of tough characters. They've been through stuff, you know, and so I like that they're more rough around the edges, and maybe there is a sentiment between them, but it's more unsaid, and I like that stuff, and it works well for the characters. It's just, I'd watch this any day of the week. I absolutely loved this film, and there was one other thing I was going to say about it, and it's kind of slipping my mind now. I can't remember. But yeah, so I was talking about how funny it was, and there was great moments, ups and downs. Yeah, okay, so there's a really great sequence where they're in the car, and it's this. I mean, I think it's set in the 30s. Like it has. I love the, you know, because it's like black and white. It was released in 1973. You almost, you know, you think that it's just a contemporary set film, but it is kind of set in the 30s and 40s. And so the car that they're driving is this gorgeous kind of vintage car, and it feels very authentic to the time period, and the clothes and everything. Just really well done, subtly done, I think, in terms of the production design. But there's this one scene when they're both in the car and the camera's on the hood, and they're driving through this, like, you know, this road in the middle of nowhere, and it's this really lengthy scene where they're going back and forth, and it's just super impressive. I was like, wow, this shot's going on for a real long time, and they're going back and forth, and phenomenal scene, phenomenal film. Paper Moon, absolutely loved it. Next up, I have seen this film, but I want to throw it in there for a certain reason, and I don't know whether I'll get round to doing a full video for this, probably not. If you'd really like to see it, let me know, but we did watch, and I've never watched this on Blu-ray before, so I guess that's kind of, I can kind of allow it, it's permissible to include it in the Conquering My Collection series. Because I did buy this because I thought at one point I will like to watch this again, even though I didn't really love it when it came out. Saw it when it came out, I gave it like a 3.5 stars out of 5, but it had a nice slipcover, like a really nice slipcover, and I thought, you know, at one point I'm going to want to watch this again. And I'm so glad I did pick this up because it was the right time, the right place, and I enjoyed it much more than I did the first time, and it is Man of Steel. Gorgeous slipcover. Really nice reflective, and there's like a nice texture to the beams coming off of the logo there. And then this is kind of a glossy, really, really nice. So Zack Snyder's Man of Steel. I just have problems with it that overrode my overall enjoyment the first time I saw it. Watching it again, I still have those problems, but I much more enjoyed the fuller story. I think it's a really damn good film. I love Henry Cavill in the role of Superman, but the few things that bother me, I think, is the Jonathan Kent line when, you know, Clark encounters the bus accident when he's a kid and he saves them all, and that kind of potentially reveals, you know, kind of his powers. And, you know, Jonathan Kent is like saying to his kind of, you know, his kind of adopted son in a way, he's like, you shouldn't have done that. And Clark Kent is like, well, you're saying I should have let all those kids die? And Jonathan Kent goes, maybe. Like, I get that you're doing different things with the adaptation and stuff, and I'm not a huge fan of, like, well, not that I'm not, I'll leave that in for free. Not that I'm not a fan of Superman, but I've never read the comics. I don't have a big knowledge of it. That's like, I'm getting all tongue-tied. You know, I don't have like a huge knowledge of the character, or even especially Jonathan Kent. But to me, Clark Kent is such a virtuous person. You know, he's such a, you know, milk and cookies, like, you know, there's just such a kind of purity to him, and innocence, and kind of a upstanding, you know, morals and everything. And I feel like that comes from the way he was raised. It's not because he came from Krypton, and that's built into him from the planet that he comes from. To me, it's the fact that he was raised by those good people. Maybe that's just my opinion. And I just don't feel like Jonathan Kent, who raised Clark to be such a good person, would say, yeah, maybe you should let that bus full of kids die just to protect you. I don't think he would have done that. I feel like he would have... That would be an outstanding circumstance in which you say, okay, in that case, risk it, because you can save a lot of lives, and that's important. You know? I don't know, maybe you could have just said, should I have let those kids die? And he's like, well, okay, I see a point, maybe not, but you need to be careful because of... And I understand his protective nature over his son, and he doesn't want him to get taken away and be studied on forever, which would happen. But I just felt like that wasn't entirely true. When I first saw the film, I also hated the sequence where he dies, and Clark could just run out and save him, and he's like, no, I'm just going to stand here and walk backwards dramatically into the tornado and die. It felt like it was just, they could have done it better. I understand how he would sacrifice his life to protect his son, and I'm behind that, but it felt like it was not set up very well. Having watched it again, last month, whenever it was, I think it works a bit better. Like he went back to save the dog, and his leg was hurt. There just wasn't enough time. So I'd forgotten that he hurt his leg. I forgot that he went back for the dog. So I was a bit more at peace with it this time round. And then the last thing is there's a really awful line towards the end of the film when Superman is speaking to some people in the army, and the woman's like, oh, I just think he's so hot. And it's like, oh, God. It's the kind of line that makes you want to take a shower. Just disgusting. Just like, not the calling someone hot is disgusting. It's just a disgustingly cliched and cringe with, oh, he's just so hot. All right, we get it. But I love like the Russell Crowe stuff, the opening stuff on Krypton, and I think that Michael Shannon was a fantastic villain. Some of the big action set pieces are fantastic, and I'm fine with the whole destroying the city thing. It's great eye candy. 2, it feels more like, holy shit, this is like really like, I don't know. It just, I didn't come out of the film thinking, well, this is really bad on all the people who could have died and stuff. And then they address it in the next film, and people kind of, and I do think they almost go a bit overboard with the second movie, which we'll just get right to right now, I guess, because this one truly should be a part of Conquering My Collection. It is Batman v Superman, the Ultimate Edition. I've never seen it before. I'd only seen the film when it came out in the cinema. And again, I liked it. 3.5 out of 5. It was a good film. Entertained me. Some stupid stuff in it, but it was alright. So everyone keeps raving about the ultimate cut and how that's the superior version of the film. It's like a 3-hour version of the Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice. And the hype behind this film, even like 10 years before it even came out, a potential Batman v Superman film in live action was like this huge deal. And, did it deliver on that? I don't know. And it's a really tricky thing to do when you have someone like Batman fighting someone like Superman. You need to have a really good reason for that. I loved how they weaved in Man of Steel's finale into this film, both in terms of revisiting that sequence from a different perspective, but also how Batman has a reason to really hate Superman. And it works, it fits, and I like the fight between them. It's fun. And the Ultimate Edition, I have to say, because I only saw the film once 5 years ago now, I certainly wasn't going, oh, that's new. Oh, that's new. So it was tricky for me to really understand, but there's a lot more backstory on certain elements of the film, and I did enjoy it more. I don't think it's this revelatory, oh my god, this is the film it should have been. I didn't quite get that, to be completely honest with you, but it was another case of Man of Steel where I was expecting what was coming in terms of the more eye-rolly kind of moments, and I think that it's a damn good film. I bumped it up to a 4 out of 5, and I did the same for Man of Steel, so I'm becoming more of a fan of them. I don't think I would get higher than that. I'll definitely watch them again now, and I'm more inclined to watch them sooner than 5 years after they came out, or in Man of Steel's case, it would have been 8 years after it came out. So, yeah, I really enjoyed coming back to this. I still think Jesse Eisenberg is not for me, I feel like I'm watching someone perform more than seeing a character. I'm fine with Lex Luthor being the way that he is in this film, and it's cool to see a different side of him, and apparently there was a version of him in the comics that's quite similar, but just not the biggest fan of it. There are moments where he's really good, and kind of sinister and really effective, so it's not one of those things where I don't like him, but it's just a bit spotty for me in terms of the overall thing. And Ben Affleck, I thought, is a really good visual Batman, and I like him as an actor. I feel like he could have really killed the role in a much better story, I think. And the whole Martha thing, I get the concept behind it. I really, really do. But it's just so clunkily delivered. It's just, Martha, what did you say? Why did you say? Like, he's just ready to fucking kill the guy. And he says, Martha, what was that? Well, it's his mother. Oh, yeah. Did we just become best friends? Like, it switches so quickly. And he's just like, I'll save this. Like, you take it. Like, it was such a switch. Even if it was like, Martha, like, what did you say? That's his mother's name. And then he's just like, shit. And then, all right, well, just, I don't know. I feel like it switches so quickly, and that kind of changes everything. Obviously, we have Wonder Woman coming in, Gal Gadot. She is the highlight of the movie. I think she's fantastic, both visually as Wonder Woman, and she gives a really charismatic performance, I think. And with the release of Wonder Woman 1984, I think some people would disagree on that. It seems like people either really love her performance as Wonder Woman or they really find it bad. So it's a really tricky balance, obviously. But yeah, I really enjoy it. I love the ending. It's very dramatic and comic booky. And again, it's kind of funny that they really address the criticisms of Man of Steel of like all of the civilians dying and stuff. And so whenever there's a big sequence in this film, it's like there's like a news report of, thankfully the island is uninhabited. Like they're really like, just so you know, like there's going to be no civilian casualties. Another one of the big, I think, controversies in Man of Steel was when he kills Zod, spoilers, and snaps his neck. It's like, Superman doesn't kill. And it's like, yeah, but that's why it's such a good scene, because you can tell that it's ripping Clark's fucking soul apart to kill this guy. He doesn't want to do it, and he's like, just stop. And he's like, I'll never stop. So I've got to kill him, and I don't want to. Henry Cavill's fantastic in that sequence, and I would say that with Batman in Batman v Superman, yeah, he kills people in the film, and they say Batman doesn't kill. But I think that you don't see Batman driven to the extremes to kill people, and so that's where it's kind of carelessly done in that sense too. But hey, I love Michael Keaton. He's my favorite Batman. He is Batman to me, and there's a sequence in Batman Returns when he just sticks a bomb down a guy's pants and throws him off the edge of it. Like, he kills people too. It's one of those things. I'm not too beholden to it, to be honest. I get it. I get that that's part of the character that he doesn't kill. And that can lead to some really interesting storytelling possibilities. But for me, I don't live or die by the Batman should not kill. Thou shall not kill. I don't know. It just, I get it, but I'm not too precious over it either. Right, this is going on fairly longer than I thought it would, but hey, it's kind of 3 months worth of stuff. A couple of 4K first-time watches of films I've already seen, so I'll kind of glide through this. So we have Alita, Battle Angel in 4K. I've already done a review of this, and I talk about the 4K, so I should probably just leave it there. If you want to see my thoughts on the film, go check out the episode I did, or the chapter that I did for Cameron, King of the World. But seeing this in 4K was great. It wasn't a huge uptick, because of course it's one of those modern films that's finished at 2K resolution, unfortunately, but I absolutely love Alita, so to see it in even a marginally better quality is something that I'm definitely going to jump at the chance to get. But this one, in terms of a 4K release, I'd heard bad things about it. I'd heard that this was a really poor 4K transfer, and that some of the 90s CGI had dated terribly. So I got this, the trilogy box set of this franchise, and I just kind of let it sit on the shelf. It was like, I think something ridiculous like £12 for the whole trilogy in 4K, and I just jumped at it, even though I was in no rush to get this particular film. But I loved the film so much. Connie has been wanting to watch it for months, so I finally let's just throw it on. And it looked great. I thought it looked fantastic. The film is Jurassic Park. Spared no expense. Just one of my favorite films. The more I see it, the more I fall in love with it. It's just again, even now seeing it, 2021, really appreciating how razor sharp some of the dialogue is in that scene, when they're in that room with the projectors and stuff, and Hammond is fielding opinions from Jeff Goldblum and Sam Neill, and so what do you guys think of what I've shown you so far? And Jeff Goldblum just completely lays into him, like, you're just, again, you're so preoccupied about whether you didn't think about whether you should. And Hammond just like, that's unbelievable, like, it's the lawyer who's the only one who sees sense. And it's such the dialogue and the pacing of it is so well done. Sometimes you just don't appreciate these things. And what was really funny about the 4K transfer is it looked great. Once the dinosaurs come in, and you really realize how little CGI was used in the film. It's not that often, and there's so many practical effects that it really holds up. And even the CGI shots, they look pretty damn good. They really do. They don't look great, obviously. There's not as much sharpness there and stuff, but for the time, it holds up tremendously well. I feel like they really picked the right moments to do the right. I'm gonna go ahead and assume that they probably spent, I don't know if they may, this might be apocryphal to say it, but it feels like they might have spent the most time on that opening sequence when you first see the long neck dinosaurs. You know, the classic moment, welcome to Jurassic. No, does he say that in that scene? I think he does. But, you know, the scene when Sam Neill turns around and like fumbles with his glasses and turns Laura Dern's head around, and you see but it's in like broad daylight, so I would imagine that's harder to make look convincing, whereas the T-Rex scene is kind of shrouded in the darkness, so you can hide maybe certain things, and it might be a bit easier to convince the audience of how real it looks. So I don't know whether they spent the most time on the daytime scene with the CGI or not, but either way, I just think that the integration of it with the practical effects still holds up today hugely, but some of the mistakes are still there, like achingly obvious mistakes. And the classic one is when the kitchen scene, when the kids are kind of hiding from the velociraptors, and the door opens and the velociraptor comes in, and you just see a hand of a crew member like just coming out, just pushing down the pushing the puppet down a little bit, and it's like, will they remove it for the 4K? Will they fuck? And you gotta love those kind of imperfections and movie mistakes and stuff. There was a moment towards the end when the T-Rex grabs the Velociraptor in its mouth and starts swinging it around, and for one frame the Velociraptor disappears, which it's imperceptible, but it's there if you kind of go in frame by frame. But the colors look great, the quality of the film grain. I'm just so happy with it, and I can't wait to see 2 and 3, because apparently, you know, 2 and 3 look even better. So I'm looking forward to that. I love Lost World. That's one of my favorites. I just really love that film. It gets a bad rap, I think, but Jurassic Park is just an absolute fucking classic. What a film. It's just brilliant. And one last thing about this, I was reading some of the reviews of the video quality, and someone said that there's a softness to the transfer, especially in the scene when Dodgson arrives. You know, when we got Dodgson here, Dodgson, see, nobody cares. In that sequence, when the guy turns up to deliver Nedry, the little kind of shaving foam can where you can kind of harvest the DNA samples of the dinosaurs, when he turns up in Costa Rica or wherever it is, and you see the little title card saying Costa Rica, I think that's what it says. And the reason that the transfer looks soft in that moment is because there is a title on screen. And that's an optical effect, and so you lose a generation of quality on the film print, and that's why when you're looking at it in 4K resolution, that softness is going to be even more apparent. And so I found that with 4K transfers in particular of movies that were shot on film, that when you see like a transition starting or text comes on screen, opening credits, sometimes it's like, oh, the image is really soft. And then you come to like a clean shot that is first generation, it just looks incredible. So that stuff really stands out, and it's fun for me to kind of see those things. The most obvious example of seeing that, I think, is when you watch really old movies, even on Blu-ray, like really old black and white films. There'll be certain shots that suddenly get really soft, and you're like, oh, a fade is coming in, and sure enough, it fades into the next scene because you're losing a generation of the quality there. Anyway, it's one of those nerdy things that I find interesting. But it was just funny that the guy in the review online was saying, well, the transfer looks really soft in that moment. Like, yeah, because it's an optical effect. Like, you should be able to, like, I'm no fucking expert, but it's clear to me that that's what the issue was. Anyway, finally, to wrap this thing up, to bring it home, there was one more thing. I'll leave it for next time, though. It's a box set that I've started. I think I'll wait until I've watched all the films before I talk about it. But there's a few films I've watched in the early women filmmakers set from BFI. But anyway, and there's actually one film in this set that I still haven't finished, but I'm going to get into it now while it's still fairly fresh. I decided to, number one, knock off quite a few more films from the watch list in rapid succession. Although that hasn't really worked out because I've watched these very staggered over the past few weeks. But it's been fun to check these out. The Buster Keaton Shorts collection from Eureka, the Masters of Cinema box set. So the third disc has all of Buster Keaton's films. I've seen all of those, but on the first two discs, we have a lot of the films that he did from 1917 to 1919. Not sure if there was one in 1920. It might say on the back here. So running up to The Garage in 1920. Yes, so 1917 up to 1920, Buster Keaton started his film career with Roscoe Fatty Arbuckle. And so he did a number of films with him. And this collection, I believe, presents all of the films that Buster Keaton starred in alongside Fatty Arbuckle. Is kind of his second-hand man, starring in smaller roles in each of the films. So I'd already seen The Butcher Boy, which is Buster Keaton's first on-screen appearance. I watched that 100 years Yeah, I think it was 100 years to the day since it was released. So I watched that in 2017, but I hadn't seen some of the other ones. So where did I start? His Wedding Night, I think I started on, which I don't remember if I can remember what that one was even about. I'm trying to remember now, because again, it's been maybe 2 months since I started checking these out. But well, yeah, His Wedding Night. I think I watched that one. Maybe I didn't. So the first one I remember, yeah, I must have. Because there was one that I watched and I thought, oh, this isn't very good. That must have been His Wedding Night. No, I did see it. It was okay. Yeah, it was alright. Okay. Forgive me kind of getting confused with myself here. So we'll start off with Oh Doctor from 1917. I'm not going to do reviews of these because, you don't really need to hear all that stuff unless you're really interested, in which case I probably wouldn't even have time to do that. But regardless, Oh Doctor from 1917. A pretty poor film, I think. And one thing I found that is a weird kind of consistent thing throughout all the Fatty Arbuckle's films is that he usually has a wife or a girlfriend that he cheats on, and is very adulterous, and that's treated as like this kind of happy-go-lucky, hey, he's cheating on his wife, isn't this fun? He's kind of like gawking at the camera and stuff. I'm going to cheat on my wife, this is great, isn't it? And it's like, oh, good one, pal. And then he also almost inevitably ends up in drag. Like, he seems to love dressing up as a woman at any angle he can find to kind of throw on a bra or something, or stick on a wig. He's all up for it. But Oh Doctor, I forget really the story of this one, but there's a really funny sequence in which him and Buster run into each other, and he's dressed up in drag, and Buster is all like flirting with him. It absolutely killed me. It's not a great film overall, Oh Doctor, but it's worth it alone for that scene where Buster is kind of like doing this on like the wall, just like trying to act all cute and kind of like, it's just so, and you can see him smiling, which is like a weird thing if you're a Buster Keaton fan. You haven't seen these early films where he never smiles, like he's the great stone face. Like the humor comes out of his completely deadpan expression, and they play on that in what's the film? It's not Go West, because that's, oh, maybe it is. Yeah, it's Go West. There's one in here called Out West. In Go West, when he's playing a poker game and they're asking him to smile, and he's just like, the classic Buster Keaton, no smile moment. But it's just so fun to see him smiling, and also Buster seems to do a lot of the kind of over the top crying, like like that kind of, and it's just weird to see him acting like that. And obviously he honed into this kind of this kind of way of working in front of the camera where he wouldn't do those over the top emotions, and that made him the legend I think that he is today. Anyway, so it's just fun to see that, and that flirting scene between them where they're kind of by the end of it they're just rolling along the walls and stuff. It's so fucking funny. Coney Island was a lot of fun. Terrible score that they composed for this, because it's they use a lot of actual songs with singing, and it doesn't feel right for a silent film. I don't know, but it was fun to see like the attractions and the rides at Coney Island, and there's a lot of fun physical humor in that, some good falls, and some good physical humor and stuff. There's an alternate ending on the Blu-ray for Coney Island. I thought, ooh, an alternate ending for a silent film. Now I can see why it was edited out, and apparently it was cut out as soon as as early as the 1920s. So the end of the film, Coney Island, has Fatty Arbuckle vowing he'll never get tangled up with women again. A woman walks past and he's like, oh, and he starts like, skipping after her, and the film fades out, and that's kind of the joke that, he's never going to be done chasing after women. The original ending continues beyond that, where he taps her on the shoulder, she turns around, she's black, and he acts in fright, horror, and shock, and runs in the other direction. And so they included that for posterity, but obviously it's one of those literally off-color, moments, which is just, it's indicative of the time. There's a similar joke in one of Buster Keaton's feature films where you just kind of, you have that kind of mirthless laugh where you're like, fuck, I can't believe, it's just one of those things. And that's just I think there's another one in College as well, actually. But I'm glad that they included it for kind of, preservation's sake, I suppose. I think it's important to see that stuff. But I'm certainly not, mad that they cut it out of the film. But it's interesting that even in the 1920s, apparently, they started removing that from the film. Out West, also from 1917, so there's quite a few. There's a good 6 movies from 1917 on this first disc. Out West was so much fun. It was kind of shot on location on this quarry, it looked like, or kind of this valley where they built a small western town. Lots of fun, and Buster is the head of this saloon, and there's Another similarly off-color moment when there's a young black man who comes in and they're just terrorizing him, which is not fun at all. But the rest of it is like a really fun kind of rousing adventure film, and I really enjoyed it. It was kind of a fun, just pistol whipping, like Western movie. It was kind of good fun. The Bellboy from 1918. Love that one. Absolutely love the Bellboy. I feel like it should be called the Bellboys because it's kind of Fatty is the literal bellboy who runs the lift, but it's really about him and Buster. And I think Al St. John is the actor who also appears in many of the other films, and he's a fairly good physical comedian as well. But those three guys are working in this hotel, and there's all this stuff going on, and it's just the way that it builds. There's like sight gags and all sorts of great stuff in it. Super fun film, The Bellboy. Really, really enjoyed it. That's one of my absolute favorites. And it's interesting because it goes up and down. There are some of these Fatty Arbuckle films that are just like, they're just not good. I think it was Oh Doctor, or maybe even His Wedding Night, where it just got incomprehensible at one point where I don't even know what's going on. I don't know who this character is. It's just a bad movie. Yeah, there's a couple of good bits where Buster Keaton's doing some fun stunts and acrobatics, but overall the story just doesn't really work that well. But The Bellboy was fantastic. Moonshine is the last one I haven't watched yet, and I kind of went out of order because I had this disc upstairs in the bedroom where I was watching some of them after work, and then I took another disc downstairs for the big TV and the PlayStation 4. So I've kind of gone back and forth with the two discs and gone a little bit out of order, but Moonshine is the last one that I've got left to watch. So we have Goodnight Nurse, which I'm already... Oh yeah, I remember that one. It wasn't a highlight from 1918. The Cook was pretty good. I liked the introduction when you see Fatty in the kitchen of this restaurant, and he's throwing things around and throwing knives around and stuff, and just the precision where he's acting careless, but the things he's throwing around are so perfectly landing. Fantastic physical comedy stuff, and Buster is the guy who's kind of going back and forth into the restaurant, back into the kitchen, and he's throwing bowls of soup and Buster's catching them. Great stuff, but it turns into absolute chaos so quickly, and it just becomes a big mess of admittedly good stuff at times, but the overall film just felt a little bit just too chaotic to really make a lot of sense, and I wasn't quite sure who's that and what's this group and why are they mad, why are they doing that. I'm not entirely sure, and it felt a bit sloppy, but there's some good stuff in it. And Luke the dog, I think, appears in this one, and he's a kind of one of the legendary animal sidekicks in some of these films. He pops up in a couple of Buster Keaton films too, and there's some good stuff with Luke the dog in this one. And then we have Backstage. And yeah, Backstage was actually a lot of fun. I really like Backstage. That was about this group of guys who work on a theater stage. A lot of good stuff there, some really good physical jokes and sight gags and things like that. And some of these are now blending over into my memory, unfortunately, but I don't have the time to do individual reviews after I've watched each one. And then there's The Hayseed from 1919. Backstage was also from 1919. The Hayseed, which I also loved, and then finally The Garage from 1920. And Buster Keaton is actually credited as a co-director on The Garage, which makes sense because The Garage was a fantastic one as well. There's just a lot of... Yeah, The Garage might be my favourite, I think, of the Fatty Arbuckle shorts. The story was really good, had a really good villain who you could really hate, and he was just really a really good villain and a really good bad guy. And just some of the set pieces were really good. But there was, I forget which, one of the earlier ones, there's a really interesting moment, I've forgotten which one it was now, where Fatty Arbuckle, I think he's getting into a swimsuit maybe, and he's getting changed, and he looks at the camera, and he's just like, oh, tilted up a bit. And it's one of those weird meta moments, which I can remember there's one in 1 week, I think it's a 1920, the 1920 Buster Keaton film where Sybil Seeley is having a bath, and she kind of throws, I think, a towel over the camera. It's like a fun, fourth wall breaking moment. But this is even earlier in one of the 1917 films where Fatty's like, okay, tilt the camera, you don't want to see everything. That was kind of fun to see. Those things is really interesting to me, to see the things that stand out or things that you don't expect to see in a film that's that old. So that was kind of interesting. But yeah, The Garage, The Hayseed, and I forget which joke this was in. I think it was The Hayseed, but it begins with Fatty as a mailman. And he's on a cart, and he's just throwing the letters, and they're just whizzing perfectly into the mailboxes where they've obviously reversed the footage and somehow had them shoot out, I think. I don't know. It's like a really fun, visual gag and everything. But then finally he's got this big envelope and he's trying to stuff it in, folding in, he can't get it in. So he just gets a pair of scissors, I think, or something. Oh no, maybe he just tears it up. He just tears up the envelope into like 4 pieces and shoves it into the thing. And it just cracked me up so much. Sometimes it's just a really simple joke that even 100 years later can still make you really, really laugh. And, you know, all of these Fatty Arbuckle films are over 100 years old now, which is crazy. But, yeah, I've really enjoyed diving into these. I have to say it's been up and down in terms of the quality of the overall films, but there's always been laughs and always been interesting things, which is kind of the main thing, as long as there's something that I find worthwhile. But, you know, watching them, it almost feels like if I don't enjoy them, at least it's kind of part of history that I'm absorbing by watching it. So, yeah. There we go. We're done. I don't know how long this video will turn out, but I've been filming for over an hour now, so that was a long one. I hope you enjoyed, and we'll see where we go with the next episode and installments of Conquering My Collection. I do like doing a nice mass wrap-up like that, so let me know if you... Well, I think I already said that in the first one. Do you like this format? And there was a lot of positive feedback of people saying that they do enjoy the format, so I'm going to assume that that's still the case now. But let me know either way. And thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.
It's alright by me. Apart from the fact he throws cans of Carlin into a tree. Yeah, he's really cool. Yeah, he's really cool. But he's not quite as cool as you.